do, because we're just asked to make an announcement. So you excuse me, Joe, while I make this announcement and unlock my phone in order to do so. Okay, great. So there is a competition for producers or content creators called Connect for Climate Virtual Reality Pitch Competition. The prize is a chance to produce your concept with an established VR production company. So if it's of interest to you, just do a search on Connect for Climate, and I will find out more about that. If you're going to be here tomorrow for VR, we could talk about that, and I will discover more on that. So that was kind of a great opening. Joe Staffel from Madison Vine. We're about to discuss branded content and the world of branded content. I met Joe not too long ago at a World's Conference, and one of the things I knew about Madison Vine was that you encourage creativity from young filmmakers, from new filmmakers. And in terms of young filmmakers being able to connect with brands to create branded content, I don't think anybody else was actually doing that, because it's usually the advertising agencies that get to connect. So I just want to ask, for Joe's and my sake, how many of you are content creators in the audience?
Good.
Great. How many of you are coming from the advertising industry or brands or marketing? Ooh, we can say anything we want about the marketing people, because there aren't a lot there. I'm just going to turn my chair a little bit. Okay, so first, there's so many, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
There are so many definitions of branded content. Tell us, Joe, exactly what we're going to be talking about today. And brands are, just from my observation, increasingly brands to get to consumers, want consumers to be part of stories and want to deliver great stories to consumers. So it looks to me like they're increasingly becoming media companies. So if you can define branded content and brands as media companies, that'd be a great place to start.
Sure. Yeah, well, there are many definitions for that, but for us, I think it's really about content that, it doesn't matter what form factor it is. It could be a feature, as in a film. It could be an episode of Sex and the City with a product placement. It could be content on Facebook, YouTube, etc. But at the end of the day, from our point of view, you have the content and you have paid media. And the differentiation here is that what's the difference between an ad and a piece of content, a piece of branded content? And the way we look at it is branded content for us is content that has emotion, that has storytelling, that can play by the rules of the current marketplace, which is we as consumers are using our devices, we are choosing when and where and how we want to consume content, we are in control. So we, as marketers and as brands, can no longer rely upon the distribution, the channel to reach those audiences. In fact, we can no longer rely upon paid media to reach those audiences. If you think about the evolution of media, certainly in the digital age, we had the banner ad, and this was going back to 99, 2000, et cetera, and you had something called the click-through rate, and the click-through rate went away because people stopped clicking on them. So then the industry started talking about the impressions, the CPM, and it's just a way of saying, yeah, we reached an audience, this image or this piece of content was in front of your audience, but now it's about digital, really, and digital and social has changed the rules where it's about the behavior around your content. So to me, it's something that and I think about this all the time, where I see content in my news feed, say from Facebook or otherwise, from friends of mine who are completely outside of the industry, who have shared some piece of content from a brand that touched them in some way, right?
And so are you counting, in terms of creating content, is shareability part of branded content?
Yeah, but by today's definition, because you can use paid media to put some amplification behind your content. So let's take YouTube, for example. You can put some spin behind and get some view counts, etc. But we see it more as like if you're starting a campfire, buying some lighter fluid. You don't want to stand there and pour the bottle the whole time for the whole night, right? But take a little bit of lighter fluid, light it on, light the fire, put a squirt on there, and let it go. Stand back. If it starts to plateau, put some more on it, etc. That's how you use paid media. But you essentially have to. The content has to perform on its own. Otherwise, people aren't going to reach it. And nowadays, audiences, particularly millennial, Gen Y, Gen Z, as we know, they're far less trusting of brands. So we can't walk in and say, "Want to buy a watch?" We have to earn earn that respect and earn that relationship.
Part of what I've heard is that millennials are willing to make a bargain with a brand. So that if you provide something useful or you provide something entertaining, I'm willing to give up, one, my time,
Correct.
which is the new currency, is the eyeballs, and two, I might make a bargain with you for my information as well, as long as I know you're going to give me something back, yes?
Right. We call that kind of an ethical bribe. So we're giving something in exchange for their giving something back.
Like
Right.
ethical bribe, alternate facts, fake
All-
news.
yep,
Just kidding.
there you go. Yeah.
You look at Red Bull. I'm going to ask you, is Red Bull a soft drink company or a media company?
I think Red Bull, it's funny you bring up Red Bull because I started in digital back in 98, and then I got into video content in 2007, 2008. And by 2010, 2011, there were still very few brands that were killing it in terms of playing by the rules of the audiences. Red Bull was one of them. They were doing a great job. Disney, who I work for and helped with their infrastructure and their social media, was another one. Burberry was another one that's doing it well. There were very few that were really just killing it. Nowadays, you see so many brands that are doing it well. To answer your question, I think Red Bull has really figured out that they are an extreme adventure company that sells entertainment that also happens to sell an energy drink.
It's so interesting because so many brands don't know who they are today. I mean, they have a traditional branding in the world, but you talk to eBay,
Yeah.
and they're not an e-commerce company. They are a technology company that happens to
Right.
use their data to give
Right.
people what they want.
Correct.
Vans is not really a sneaker company. They're a lifestyle company. So in this world, there are people like you and Madison and Vine that sort of are helping brands negotiate this transition from just, here is my product, please buy it, here are my 5 advantages to this product,
Correct.
to, oh my God, I have to have this product because it represents me and it's
Right.
part of my life. So can you talk a little bit about Madison and Vine and what you do for clients? And I know we have some clips, so Travis is up in the booth and you can just call
Sure.
for them when you're ready.
Right. So Madison.
Thank you, Travis.
So Madison Vine, we are a hybrid. We are part creative/agency and part production together in one. And the company was really founded a few years ago with the idea that on the brand side, while we create a branded and original content, on the brand side, you have market pressures such as the CMOs and the leadership in marketing that are controlling these billions of dollars of spend. The dollars have now capitulated. They've gone from traditional, meaning broadcast and print, into digital. More dollars are being spent in digital and social than the former, and yet there are more mouths to feed. There are more channels, there are more frames to fill, et cetera. So they're under tremendous pressure to keep up with that demand. Meanwhile, while the budgets have shifted, they're still status quo. They're not getting bigger, right? So you have to make more with, frankly, less. So there's those pressures, and then on the other side, the brands also want to connect with, every brand wants to connect with many audiences, but a lot of them are really thinking about millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z. And so we noted that in film schools today, at least in the United States, you have approximately 5,000 graduates, directors and the like, from film school every year. And so there's this, almost like this oversupply of talent coming out, really great talent. And if you take a step back and think about career paths, if you're a programmer, a computer science major, you can make great grades and you can aspire to go work for a Facebook or Google when you graduate. If you're a finance major, you can aspire to go work for one of the great banks or one of the consulting companies. If you're a filmmaker, what happens? You work hard, you make good grades, you went to film school because you're a storyteller, and you graduate with a great reel and lots of awards and $100,000 in debt and no career path, right? So what we've done is we've created a pathway for some of that top talent to tap into that marketplace. So we have a program called Filmmakers in Residence, and with that we have curated some of the top talent, Tisch, SC, Toronto, Vancouver, all across the country, and we put filmmakers, these directors, into that program. And essentially when a brand wants to create a piece of content, we create, or we work with them on the brief, and then we take that brief and we create a think tank. And the think tank is a page we took out of Pixar. So you might have a director like Ed Catmull overseeing Toy Story, but actually a think tank works on every single scene. That's why there's so many Easter eggs and really great moments inside those films. And so we work as a team, meaning we pull in 3 or 4 of those directors I mentioned, these young, talented directors. We pair them with one of our creatives. These are agency creatives who also direct, so they speak the same language. And then we throw in production and post-production, and that is our think tank. They come up with the ideas. And what happens is you end up with a lot more ideas, a lot more robust. The brands love it because we work with brands that have told us they've tried to work with young filmmakers direct to create content. It was a disaster. So they love that there's this experience buffer that's helping teach these very talented, bright minds about KPIs and target audiences, et cetera. So
and
that's
in
really
many
the recipe.
cases, the filmmakers themselves are the audiences that the brands want to reach. So they're
Exactly.
already speaking a language that these venerable brands cannot speak.
Right. So it goes something like this. You know, I've spoken to like the North American CMO of Visa, and she says, we love our agency, BBDO. They do great content for television, but they really struggle with anything in digital for under $500,000. That's a lot of money. And so, and then secondly, you know, they say that their agencies, you know, struggle with how to connect with these younger audiences. So who better to tell those stories than those folks themselves? So that's really at the genesis of.
It seems, you know, our company, Storytech Immersive, what we do is we have the same issue because nobody understands virtual reality productions, the subtleties of it, and there's a lot of brands that are producing mediocre or actually bad virtual reality.
Yeah.
So these young film students who come out, we pair these independent filmmakers with existing assets, existing companies, and they're actually learning from each other. So it really does serve the industry. And at the same time, so a brand, and I'm going to ask you this because I know we're going to watch clips, but the brand also has to consider the brand of the platform they're going on to. So what you create for Facebook is not what you create for Instagram, is not what you create for Snapchat. And so knowing how to shift and change that content for those different audiences on different platforms, that's got to be a huge challenge that brands may or may not understand.
Yeah, it is. Although I would argue that the solution is deceptively simple. In any project that we take on, they're like a puzzle, and you've got all these different pieces, and you're trying to find the right fit. And of course, the fit that also looks good, that something that it's gonna have emotion, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna feel something, you're gonna want to share it, right? And so for us, the puzzle includes just a few simple questions like, who's your target audience? How do you want to reach them? Where do you want to reach them? What behavior do you want them to take? And what do you want to measure? And if you go in with those 5 questions, you'll have so much figured out. We've been briefed by brands such as Intel, where they shared with us, you know, that they have a problem. They have amazing brand awareness. Everybody knows of Intel, but to certainly a younger audience, a millennial, a Gen Y, Gen Z, they say that they view Intel as a 50-year-old dude and Dockers in a golf shirt. You know, and just so they're trying to chip away at that by doing sponsorships with X Games, creating different content. Their partnership with Lady Gaga, they did the drones over the Super Bowl.
So supported Vice in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's not about creating. You know, the old model was we're going to create a TVC and we're going to dump it on YouTube and we'll take cut downs, the matching luggage, right? Nowadays you have to play by the rules of the platform. You have to play by the rules of the audience. So we're one of 2 two partners of Snapchat providing long-form content, and it's a totally, you know, vertical video is a whole different game for brands and a totally different audience set, and you know, so each platform has its own rules. But at the end of the day, the type of stuff that we really focus on is the hero, probably the YouTube first digital content, but surprisingly, of our clients, all of our work. About 30% of that content that we've produced, the client has come back and said, can you cut a TVC for us? So it's like they're using the platform.
Meaning a television commercial.
A television commercial. So basically, they might spend $250,000 for a beautiful series of content with us, and then they'll come back and say, my God, this thing performs so well, we'd like a cut down for this channel. we'd like a cut down for broadcast, et cetera. So they actually get $1 million
It's actually
spot.
digital first.
It is.
They spent a lot less money than they would spend, especially car companies, and
Yeah.
than they would spend for a traditional television commercial. And they have assets that they can use in multiple ways.
Yeah, well, these systems are basically feedback loops. So if we're not using them to get the feedback, then we're missing the whole point, because all that social is a behavior in digital that's measured.
So it's like an
right?
A/B test.
It's like a multivariate test. So years ago, when I was at Disney and we were managing all the social channels, I got some very interesting feedback early on. So I was running a team that did the great cleanup. So we took all the rogue channels, we created new official channels, we created publishing systems. We worked with, in a very restrictive environment, very protective. Disney's one of the most litigious companies in terms of protecting IP. And we got the company up and going, and we had some really interesting wins. So for example, I'd call this a win. When we cleaned up all the pages, we noticed that there was one character on Facebook who had more fans, surprisingly more fans than anyone else. Does anyone want to take a guess who that was?
I'm thinking it's got to be one of the princesses.
Could be.
Ariel?
It was Dory the fish.
Oh.
And the really interesting thing about that was that we got so excited, and we thought, well, maybe it's because it's Ellen DeGeneres. She's such an approachable person. But then we looked at the fan base, and it was very international. So she's not the voice in Mexico or in other countries. So it wasn't that. But the bigger learning was that we were so excited, we wanted to buy a plush Dory to keep in our office as our mascot, and we wanted to give one to the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, as sort of a token of our accomplishment. And you couldn't find it at the Disney store, the stores. In fact, the only place you could find it was on eBay for $65. So the company had no idea that the most popular character in the kingdom. So that's one example. Another example was, and more relevant to this, is that, and there's a reason why Finding Dory was called Finding Dory, not Finding Nemo 2, right? So when you think about it, we were running, for Toy Story 3, we were running fan acquisition buys to build out the fan base leading up to a year before the re-release. 10 years had passed between 2 and 3. And so I was running a media buy, and it was just a little thumbnail of Woody, and it said, like Toy Story, like Woody, like Toy Story. And that ad would be shown in all the countries where Tom Hanks is associated with that character, so Canada, US, England, Australia, et cetera. And that ran its flight, and so we got a good acquisition, their cost per acquisition, a CPA. And then the next permutation was the same ad, but the targeting was changed from Tom Hanks to Randy Newman. And surprisingly, the Randy Newman instance did phenomenally better. And so we were
When you say Randy Newman instance, can you explain that?
So it was just the exact same targeting, the exact same ad, but instead of focusing on fans of Tom Hanks who are not fans of Toy Story, it was fans of Randy Newman, the singer, the voice of, the composer for all of the music, You Got a Friend in Me, did extremely well. It was much cheaper, and we got more fans for the same flight. So that told us, wait a minute, we're not looking at the music and Randy Newman. So it'd been 10 years between the two films, between Toy Story 2 and now coming out Toy Story 3. So what we did was we asked for permission from Pixar, and we did a remix of You've Got a Friend in Me, and we auto-tuned it because that was popular at the time. And we got Randy Newman's approval, and then we put that out there. We just put it up on the Disney YouTube channel, and that ended up being a Yahoo homepage story, ended up being picked up by the New York Times. So that's an example of a feedback loop that you can get from an ad flight that cost us a few $100s.
And what you're also doing is you're evoking nostalgia, your memory.
Or contemporize. Just you want to.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about speaking of Randy Newman. We were working in a film, and unfortunately, nobody has heard of "You Can Leave Your Hat On" from 9.5 weeks, and we wanted to use the song and the thing, and it was like, well, who are the fans? They're not going to know that music. And the question then becomes, well, if you reintroduce the music and you do a different arrangement of it, could you actually bring the song back? Because the lyric is so totally appropriate to the film. So it's very interesting how Randy Newman is a brand unto himself.
Yeah.
And he's a brand that's associated with something that you want to run.
Right.
I want to run some of the clips
Yeah.
and start to talk about how one creates content. And I think these brainstorming sessions, these think tanks, just brilliant ideas because I know how these work, and there's no one that has a bad idea. And those, you never know where you're going to end up. So I assume what we're going to start to watch is the result of those think tanks.
Correct. So we'll talk a little bit about each. There's 3 examples from Madison Vine. I thought I would share. The first one is a piece campaigned by Gatorade from Win From Within. So we were hired by the CMO, Morgan Flatley. She's now at McDonald's, so we've got an eye on her to see what great things she does with that brand. A lot of opportunity there. So, it's interesting because Gatorade, they have Shy It Day, TBWA Shy It Day is their agency. They do all of their big spots like this Win From Within campaign. They'll have Serena Williams, beautiful pieces. And they really wanted to reach a different demographic and go digital first. So they came to us and they said, find us stories of athletes who are overcoming some sort of challenge through excellence in sports. And by the way, it can't be college because of the restrictions, and it can't be pro because of the restrictions, working with brands. And so it really left us at the high school level. So what we did was we did our think tank, and using a number of these directors and their networks, they were able to source for us hundreds of candidate stories, of which we Skyped, we did conference calls, we vetted. We presented a short list to Gatorade. They greenlit 4 of the stories, much to our delight. So,
was there any outreach for those stories from in social, or this was just
no?
okay.
Well, no, we did a lot of it through our own networking. Although there's another version in Taco Bell we'll talk about in a minute where we got the story straight from the fans. But what was great was Gatorade greenlit 4 of the stories. So one is a story of Bethany. She's a competitor. She's a triathlete. She returns to complete the Ironman a month after giving childbirth. There's a story of Nathaniel, who's a fierce competitor, and the only sport he can play is swimming because he's a hemophiliac. And there's Blessman, who is celebrated in American Samoa, where football is the only your ticket off the island, right? And then finally, there's Jade, which we'll watch right
now. I like to prove people wrong. I love softball since I picked up a ball. Sweat and dirt and grass. To every softball player, it's like the best smell ever. I'm Jade, and I play softball, and I just happen to have one hand.
When she was born, and we found out she didn't have a...
So what is the arrangement with ESPN then?
Well, actually, so they just asked us to produce these for YouTube. The one that's on YouTube of the Jade story is actually much longer. I think it's like 3.5 minutes. I like this one because it's a little bit shorter, but this was a cut down for broadcast.
So when the agency comes, they already have their brand positioning in place, which is we're going to do this Win From Within program, and now we need story to support that.
Well, yeah, it's like, again, it's like every brand comes to us with a new challenge. So they're trying to reach a new audience. They're trying to make their media work better for them. They're trying to change perception. If you look at, outside of the work that we've done, for example, I just saw a great spot by Volkswagen. You can look at it, I think, on YouTube, and it's called Generation Air, and it's meant for the German market, but it has English subtitles. And if you think about what's going on with Volkswagen, with the cheating and everything else, well, they're not going to talk about the technology and the performance. So they're really going back to their roots, and it's the story of this relationship between a father and son told through the lens of this old classic Volkswagen Beetle. And it's a great piece. It's 6 minutes long. I watched all 6 minutes of it, and I got excited. And I think that's the game, right?
It's really interesting because if you think about it, Subaru has done that throughout its whole brand history, that they've always relied on the family, and it's always been those stories. I find this interesting because that piece communicates on so many different levels. I mean, yes, there's the Gatorade cooler in there, and yes, there's that. But it's communicating for women and girls. It's communicating for inclusion, which is a hallmark of that generation. It's communicating support from a product. Like they're not talking about hydration, but you get it. Yeah. And it's talking about it's an inspirational piece which says, okay, now we're associating our brand with all of those
Yeah.
four things, and it communicates on all those levels at once. So it's actually really brilliant.
Those are part of the rules. So you don't have to hit the consumer over the head. You know, they're smart. They'll figure it out. If you give them something, that's an ethical bribe. If you give them something of value, they'll talk about it. They'll share it. They'll post it. A good buddy of mine from college, he is another person outside this industry, so has no interest in film or branded content or anything else. Through him, I saw on Facebook a spot he posted 2 days ago by Windex, and it's called Meet Lucy. And similar to the Volkswagen spot, it's the story of a father and a daughter. And Windex, and it's got great score, great story, and that's the example. People are sharing brands and their content, and there's a little bit of product placement there, but you don't have to hit them over the head. The consumers are smart. They'll figure it out. So if you respect the audience, they'll respect you.
I just saw a piece, speaking of that, I just saw a piece yesterday. I wish I could remember the director's name. Famous director. It's produced by a friend of mine, Jean Demiron, and it's for a new virtual reality goggle called VIFF. And it's 60 seconds of brilliant storytelling, excellent cinematography. It's just shot beautifully, and you hope that the product that they're selling actually lives up to what they've created in the story, and it does end with the product. But you already have a relationship with the guy that's trying to release himself from the tethers of old VR, and you have to think, and especially if you're running even short things on the web or on mobile, you've got less than 3 seconds to get someone's interest and attention.
Yeah, you have. There's been studies. You know, you've got exactly. TrueView was a product that that brands liked. It was the whole YouTube. You can skip this ad in 5 seconds or whatever, because the brand doesn't get charged for that. That you have to watch it for the 5 seconds, so you get the free impression. But you're losing the game. You've lost the engagement. So literally, you've got the first few seconds to hook them in. But I think on the flip side,
Great challenge for storytellers.
great challenge. But I think on the flip side, like right now, the big shiny toy with Facebook is they're pushing 6-second video, and I have a love-hate with Facebook. I have a lot of respect for what they've been able to achieve and disrupt, and and be a real challenger to Google. But I don't know if 6 seconds is going to leave me with much. So I feel like that's more of a paid media play, and that's helping their stock, and that's how they're growing. So it's just another way of creating origami out of their media.
But if you think
product.
you've got this thing tag, and I want to make sure we get to the other clips, and I say to you, Joe, you and your team, you have 6 seconds to get this, like name that tune. You get 6 seconds to get this key point across. I mean, I, as a storyteller, would love that challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, how many would love that challenge if you had to respond to telling a quick story in 6 seconds? So I think, and unfortunately, we live in 130, soon to be 250, whatever it is, character world, and you don't have that much time to tell stories. And every panel we've had today is about the proliferation of content and media. So if you're able to, that's a win if you can do that.
It is. It is. Although each asset and each form factor and each platform plays a specific role. So with taking that into mind, don't put all your bets into 6-second video. But I do think for brands, the advice I would give to them is, take risks. But by taking risks, you never put the brand at risk. So the biggest risk is nobody watched it. But you never put your brand out there that suddenly people are going to turn on you. Maybe like what Pepsi did.
Oh, God.
And
That was with everyone know the Kardashian Pepsi story? Okay.
And also put great trust and faith in the filmmaker. Madison Vine is about Madison Avenue, and the brands and the relationship with Vine, the creator, the storyteller, the filmmaker, and put your trust in those folks to connect with your audience. And if you do that in a really balanced way, it'll work.
It's also trusting your audience.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
The
Okay,
subjects.
what's our next clip?
Our next clip, I believe, is a spot by, actually, Pepsi Creators League approached us. We had done some work with them, and Creators League is the in-house studio for Pepsi and the Pepsi brands. They have a relationship with Panda Express. Panda Express has thousands of stores, and they are a Pepsi distributor in their stores. So Pepsi wanted to work with them on a spot for Chinese New Year. And Panda Express wanted to reach a larger audience beyond the typical Chinese American or Chinese Canadian fan of or celebrant of Chinese New Year in North America. So they came to us, and we did the whole think tank and came up with a number of concepts. And the one that we landed on and shot is the next one called Meet Z by a great director by the name of Jake Viramontes, one of our filmmakers. Yeah, if you don't have a little bit of a lump in your throat, then
you don't have a heart.
That's Jake Viramontes. So that director, he does a lot of documentaries, and the scene with the hands and everything, he just knows how to pull at the heartstrings. And so, when we know that that's the format, we'll pair that director.
But I just want to ask, how many, after watching that commercial, have increased respect for that brand? Really? Do you feel manipulated by the brand? Interesting. Well, she brings up a very good point, which is sales are ultimately what keep a brand alive.
Yeah, but and you know what, and that's fine. One of the things that I learned early on, like back in the Disney days, and we had to layer in moderation. We made it very clear, negative comments are comments, and so if someone has a reaction, that's valid, and you let the audience take care of that. We obviously were moderating against hate language and profanity, but there were some interesting cases where, like if it was a game and someone said, "This is the shit," it's not bad, but that could be a compliment.
But once you release that brings up a very good point. Once you release branded content into the marketplace, sir at the top, who just said that felt manipulated, can I ask how old you are? Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting because this is your challenge.
It is, but also, this had a specific challenge, which was to try and broaden Chinese New Year beyond, which is a difficult thing to do. And there are other challenges that Panda Express has. So, for example, they can run all the television media they want in California and Texas because they have great saturation. But in New York, the tri-state area, they have only 15 stores, so they can't do that. So they rely upon digital as a way to connect to it. So part of it is, you're creating content that speaks to different audiences and everything else, and targeting them in a way that you can't reach through television.
It does seem like a very, and I want to make sure we get to everything else. It does seem like a very fine line.
Well, it is. Look, I worked with Target on a number of initiatives, and it can be very upsetting because they posted a piece years ago on YouTube that was in Spanish, and it was around Target Baby, and it was an adorable spot, but it offended a lot of people, and those are Target consumers, and of course Target offends a lot of people. They're those of you that know them in the U.S., I know they were here in Canada for a minute.
We got 10 minutes left,
okay.
So let's run to Taco Bell.
So Taco Bell, this is the third of the show and tell I'm giving you. Taco Bell has been a great client. They came to us. They were one of the clients that said, they really want to connect with these younger audiences. Their goal is to be a category of one. A category of one is what Red Bull is, it's what Disney is in entertainment, it's what Nike is in athletics. And they think that they have a better shot than their peers in the quick service restaurant space to become this. And it helps that, their fans are kind of crazy, right? So kind of like a Disney fan where we put up an image of a turkey leg and people would go nuts because they sell them in the parks. So with Taco Bell, their challenge was they wanted to tell stories about that positioned the chain as a place of connectivity. It's not about a limited time offering. It's not about the food. And so we did the think tank model. We came up with a number of ideas. Some of them were crazy, like surprising a crowd with drones that deliver tacos and all kinds of crazy stuff. But in the end, they greenlit something called Taco Tales, which is basically drunk history meets Taco Bell. So these are stories that we gleaned from Taco Bell social channels, real life, true stories, we presume, and we produced them. So Season 1 was 6 episodes, went over extremely well. The YouTube can be a very hater community, comments, likes to love, great enthusiasm. Similarly, we did the second season, and I'm going to share with you one episode called Prom Nom Nom, which is sort of a throwback to Saved by the Bell, kind of the 90s kind of era. And roll it.
Back and watch for that guy.
Yeah, right.
So we've got about 5 minutes left, believe it or not, so we don't have the time for the last clip. I just want to ask you, in terms of the Canadian creative community, it's very important that they understand and have access to branded content. So you're working with brands that cross border.
Yep.
How do Canadians become part of your process?
Well, we've been doing a number of productions in Canada. We work with Samsung, and we've shot a number of spots in BC, most recently during winter, a spot last winter in one of the forests, and we had 3 helicopters and a snowmobile and a wakeboarder, and it's all part of their Do What You Can't program. And then we've done a number of other productions up here. But so in terms of production, Vancouver has so many advantages. But also it's through the network, the Filmmaker Network. So if you're a director, if you're someone who wants to be part of our network, we have 3 tiers. So we have that Filmmaker in Residence, so the young, a few years out of film school, director with a desire to be part of our community. We'd love to speak to you. And then there are directors that we represent, either exclusively or non-exclusively, and directors that we manage. And directors that go up to the 12, 13-year experience level, not quite at the level of say, a Pretty Bird or MJZ, but folks that allow us to go to any brand, whether it's docu or scripted, unscripted, comedic, any format. It gives us great leverage. So we're only as strong as the filmmakers are. So for us, we want to be the most coveted job, frankly, to some of these really talented young filmmakers coming right out of film school. We want them to say, like a programmer wants to go to Facebook or Google, we're going to say, we want to go work for Madison
They
Vine.
just find you through the website? How do they?
Correct. So there's MadisonVine.com. There's our social channels. Obviously, you can reach out to me, Joe Staffel. I'm on all the usual suspects. LinkedIn's probably a good place to start.
That's where I found you.
Yeah.
So, and are you going to be around
Yeah.
for the reception this
Yeah.
evening and whatnot? I wish we had time for questions, but you've got Brian Sullivan here who's going to tell you how to negotiate your way through the world. So that's what's up next. So I hope you'll stay for that. Joe, thank you so much for being here today. It is a complicated, rich, and deep topic. And just for the record, I didn't feel manipulated by any of that. So, but then I'm
Very good.
old. So,
Very good.
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.